And welcome to another fun-filled episode of that 401k podcast. Ari Rosenbaum here with Dan Venturi. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing great, Ari. How was your week?
Well, I saw you a couple days ago for our weekly meeting over there at Cheesecake Factory.
Yes, sir.
Fine, Pete Alonso won the All-Star Home Run Derby, which is cool. Watched the All-Star game, and I guess the Mets have decided that they are going to tank this season because they offered some 80% off ticket deal with in honor of Pete Alonso because he's number 20, so they did 80% off. And I got my remaining game tickets that I want. I always go to events where they have giveaways. So, Mr. Met on the Moon bobblehead night, I'll be there. And there's a Build-A-Bear workshop giveaway in September.
Oh, wow. How about Seinfeld night? How was that?
Seinfeld night was a lot of fun. Met the Soup Nazi, Larry Thomas, not the original Soup Nazi, but the guy who played him on TV. And we got the Jerry Seinfeld bobblehead, and Jerry was at the game throwing out the first pitch, which was kind of cool. And they actually had a half-decent crowd. And, of course, Edwin Diaz was the Mets closer. The game was tied against the Phillies, and as soon as he gets on the mound, my wife's like, let's go. It was like the ninth inning. She's like, I got a bad feeling about it. By the time we were in the parking lot, they were down 4-2, and they lost like 7-2 that day.
What happened? That guy was unhittable last season.
Yeah, well, you're talking about the Mets. So,
That's where I was going with this.
Yeah,
you took us there.
I was against the Cano deal because the guy was 36 years old, and he's owed like $80 million. And, we got caught with PDs last year, and I never anticipated that that Diaz would be such a bust to make this whole deal a colossal bust.
It's tragic. It's certain franchises.
Well, I always call it the curse of Buckner's ball. It's like ever since the ball went through Buckner's leg, it's been one calamity after another. Starting out with 87 when Doc had his drug problem and every pitcher went down. 88, you had the social home run where they were up 3-1 against Dwight. And then they didn't use Dwight for Game 7. And then you got, the Dallas Green years, when at first Jeff Torborg and, Saberhagen and, Vince Coleman. And then...
Remember that prospect that they had who was can't miss? He was an infielder.
Greg Jeffries.
Yes.
Greg Jeffries was an ex-Ty Cobb.
I remember that. Where'd that? I mean, that was a huge... Yeah. We could spend a whole series of podcasts on Met calamities, I think.
Yeah, but Greg Jeffries was the second coming of Ty Cobb. He had a good start in 88. When they brought him up in August, he displaced Wally as the second baseman for the playoff run. Good hitter. He had. I've never met anybody who ever said a teammate of his who ever said a nice thing about him. Lenny, I know, doesn't. They always thought he had this prima donna attitude, and he just didn't sit well. And then the Mets got rid of him in the deal to get Saberhagen with the Royals. So they sent him out there, and I think Greg ended up with the Phillies. Never really, turned out to be, whatever. But then again, I grew up as a kid. Tim Leary was the next Tom Seaver. And
there's a lot of those, right?
Yeah, Tim Leary was the next Tom Seaver. Joe Torre, of course, was the manager of the Mets, and he really pushed Tim Leary to start. And Tim, first game in Chicago at Wrigley Field, he got injured. And he never really mattered with the Mets at all. He never really, until he got to the Dodgers, and that's when he started to pitch really well, and he ended up with the Yankees. And that cost Torre his job in 81. And then that's the reason why Cashin didn't want Davey to bring up Dwight in 84. But he relented.
Okay.
So
there you go, folks. A little baseball trivia to start the podcast.
Well, the Mets, what are you going to do?
Well, there's always next year, right?
I always tell people, you're a Mets fan, this, and that. I'm like, you know what? I got the Giants. I got 4 Super Bowls, so, I'm okay.
Hey, you got the Clippers, too. Congratulations.
Well, listen, Yeah, they got Kawhi, but they paid a ransom for Paul George. That if you look at it, I think the Rockets did a better job in getting Westbrook. Didn't cost them that many picks, but they did have to give up Chris Paul. But Clippers.
When did the Rockets get Westbrook?
Last night. For CP3 and like 3 picks.
Today? Yesterday?
Yeah, late last night.
I totally missed that. Wow, so Chris Paul got screwed. He got sent out to Oklahoma City.
Again, because if you remember when he started out with the Hornets in New Orleans, they ended up in Oklahoma City because of Katrina.
Oh, so look at that. He had a bad day. The Oklahoma Thunder have what? 8 first-round picks?
Something like that. It's crazy.
From other teams, plus their own.
Yeah, they're going to be okay. Well, they're not going to be okay for this year, but, if Billy Donovan can survive, they'll be good pretty quickly. Because, you can obviously use those picks for, the free agencies now where everybody's trying to build a winner now. They're foregoing the draft. I mean, there was talk about the Knicks already dealing Barrett to get Westbrook. It was like Barrett, Knox, and a couple of picks, and that didn't go anywhere either. But whatever, should be interesting.
You've got Westbrook playing with Harden, and there's still only one basketball, right, in the game. They haven't added a second ball.
Yeah, I mean they didn't exactly coexist that well in Oklahoma City, so I don't know how they're going to do it in Houston. I mean, and that Western Conference is jam packed, and the problem is. With the Clippers, you brought in Kawhi, but it's like you still got to contend with the Lakers. You still got to contend with the Rockets.
The Warriors?
Warriors are not going to be that great, especially with Thompson out for the year.
The Jazz? Jazz got really good.
Jazz are good. They're an up-and-coming team. Probably
the Nuggets. The Nuggets were pretty good.
Yeah, and that's why I had a friend of mine said, the Knicks should go after Westbrook. I'm like, no, they shouldn't. They should build within. Because Westbrook doesn't bring you to the echelon of the East. In the East, you got the Nets, you got the 76ers, the Celtics, the Bucks. I mean, it's crazy.
I think the only team that can compete with the West might be the Bucks. The Nets, once they get Durant, might be in the discussion. But the West is so stacked. And before you know it, you're going to have the Pelicans and the Thunder reloaded. And they're going to be driving the bus.
I like what the Pelicans did. They're actually in a better spot than the Thunder because they got Zion.
Fascinating stuff, man.
We'll see what happens. But anyway, let's talk about our events that are upcoming. We're going to be in Cleveland on September 20th at Progressive Field. Very excited. I'm looking forward to that. I might be in Cleveland in August on a family vacation, so this would probably be my second time in Cleveland within 2 months. Then we're going to be in Foxborough. October 11th, Gillette Stadium. There'll be a game the previous night against the Giants. We'll see whether we could get in or not. November 8th, we'll be back where I kind of said back where it all began, but it really didn't begin there. But it's kind of like a second home, New Jersey, East Rutherford, New Jersey, for MetLife Stadium. And then we're going to be December. We're going to be in AT&T Stadium. And, of course, the big event, National Conference at Walt Disney World in March 2020. Working on some more planned sponsors, more conference sponsors, and, of course, speakers. We're going to have something. It's going to be a lot of fun. Dan and I have been talking about it. And I've been talking about it to some other advisors. I saw some advisors this week. They're building a practice out here in Long Island. And, I remember when I started the first grade. I changed schools, whatever. I kept on changing schools for one reason or another. And I was there at the first grade, and you're sitting there alone, and you kind of don't know anybody. And then you finally meet that one kid, and then all of a sudden you're, like, integrated in with all the other kids. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of the events that I've been to, on the national scale, or even on the local scale, I feel like there's, like, a lack of connection. You feel like you're, I always use the expression, you feel like you're in an airport. There's no connection. And, I was pointing out that, after our first event at Citi Field, Cassandra Churchill from Lincoln was the one who said to me, you know what's missing here? I said, what? She's like, you need a networking time. And so, at every conference that we have, the local events, we have at least 15 minutes where, and then of course there's lunchtime, but 15 minutes which is devoted to networking. And I think a big focus that we're going to do on the national event is, and you've come up with some ideas that we're going to work through, of really, networking skills, and not skills, but, time to meet the providers, to meet, other people in the industry, to get insight. Because I think that is where, you can listen to an hour to hear some, risk expert speak. But quite honestly, I think in a conference setting, the more you get out of it is meeting other providers, other sides of the country, other practices. And, that's how I built my practice, by, reaching out to advisors and offering them help. And, it's the late, great Rich Larita, who was the salesperson that I always credit to helping my career out, always was a big thing that the retirement plan industry is a relationship-driven business. And, that's something that we are certainly going to focus on for the national event as we get, closer towards it, and fill out the speaking slots and see what kind of interesting things that we could be doing.
Yeah, and just to expand upon that a bit, I mean, I think the real added value of this event is going to be being able to network, but in a non-stuffy business, boxy kind of environment, right? I mean, the idea is to sort of, let your hair down, so to speak. Enjoy where you are. You're at Disney. Bring your family. Conduct business, but not with the stress and the formality of normal business avenues, right? Very relaxed, very enjoyable. I think in those kinds of settings, folks tend to be more themselves. And they're able not just to convey things more sincerely and build stronger relationships and bonds, but I think they're also more receptive to the messages that the presenters and the people that we've got lined up are going to share.
Exactly. So it's going to be something new. It's as I always discuss, it's where fun is going to meet 401k. And it's going to be something unique. I always say, you've been to one national event, you've been to all of them. Sometimes that's how it feels like. So we're going to do something. And, listen, they do a great job. All the different national events, they all have their audience and where they fit into the landscape. And we're just going to do something different. And that's always been about the events that we do. Everybody can have an event at the local Marriott and eat the rubber chicken, as I call it. But, not everybody can go and have a memorable time at, Progressive Field or MetLife Stadium or obviously Gillette Stadium as well. So anyway, let's move on to the topic. Enough of the commercialization and our NBA picks. Let's talk about...
We didn't make picks. We just made... That was pure analysis.
I know. Really some new stuff that's going on in the industry that really 401k plan sponsors and probably even some plan providers are really unaware of. One great thing about this business is it's constantly changing. The stuff that I had to deal with when I first started out in 1998, it's changed from 2019. 1998 was a lot of converting plans over to participant direction. You didn't have websites for participant direction, and you had to use the phone or paper to change your investment elections. The good old days. When I needed to find out what my mutual fund account balance was, I had to call it in and get the automated system. So we've come a long way from there. So every single time, 8 years ago, was fee disclosure. That was the big topic of the day. There were a lot of chicken littles in the business who said the sky was going to fall. Only the cheap provider is going to make out. Didn't really turn out to be the thing, but. What's happening now in 2019 is unique. It stands out on its own, like every other year. So let's talk about some of the things that are going on in the business that sponsors and providers really don't know about. Number one is obviously another crack at the fiduciary rule. Department of Labor has said they will try a third time, maybe third time's a charm, and coming this fall, they're going to talk about implementing a new rule, and we'll have probably a proposed new rule. What will be in that new rule, I have no idea. I think it's going to try to mirror what the SEC came out with. The only thing I will guarantee is nobody will be happy. That's a guarantee. You're a broker. You don't want any rule that's going to put you on a level that's close to being a fiduciary, full fiduciary. If you're an RIA, you're going to be ticked off that the rule didn't go far enough and that brokers are now going to function under a watered-down rule. I can't predict. I don't have a crystal ball, but that's the only thing I can predict. Everybody is going to be pissed. And the only people going to make out are the lawyers who are going to charge to, look at the service agreements and see if it fits the new rule and yada, yada, yada. Broker-dealers are going to spend millions in legal fees. And ERISA attorneys are going to write articles upon articles upon articles with insight on the loopholes within the new rule and all that kind of stuff. But plan sponsors and providers really need to realize that there will be some sort of rule proposed. Whether that ever gets implemented, that's a good question. This is, again, the third time. 2 times withdrawn, maybe the third time's a charm. We'll see. I think everybody needs to be aware that this is going to be a thing, and it's going to affect business. And if it affects business, that's something that everybody's got to consider.
Well, you almost hope that there are only so many times you could fend it off, right? At one point, you'd think the people that are opposed to something will try and cut the best possible deal. And to your point, everyone not being happy is sort of the hallmark of a good deal, right? I mean, they always say a successful negotiation is one where everyone walks away a little pissed off, right? I mean, there's some inherent balance to that. So, hopefully what you sort of laid out is kind of what happens, right? I mean, I think any practitioner out there on either side of the agenda, right, whether it's a broker-dealer or an RIA, I think their ultimate goal needs to be the same, right? It needs to be act in the best interest of the participant. Admittedly finding a way, for them to maintain a career or to, earn a living, but act in the best way of the participant. And I think, hopefully, at the end of the day, once all the nonsense and the rhetoric settles down, that's what we're left with. Some sort of rule that both sides are able to digest that ultimately benefits the participant. I mean, it drives me batty when I get requests. We've got some really big plans that have some really competitive pricing, and it just drives me batty when people take balances out and they move them to, the Edward Jones guy or some bank guy. They're just not getting the same deal. And I don't want to say they're being sold snake oil, but they're being misled. No one is looking at it from a dollar-to-dollar standpoint, right? Yeah, sure, there might be some value to having somebody look at their money, but what are they really doing? I mean, we talk about this all the time. I mean, you could throw darts and pretty much stay close to the S&P 500, right? There's not a whole lot of differentiation there. So what are folks really getting for that extra cost? So I mean, I'm sort of spiraling down a rabbit hole here, so I'm going to shut up. But at the end of the day, I do hope that they come to a point where everyone is somewhat, if not happy, at least accepting of what's legislated.
Yeah, we'll see about that. But just breaking news, I see on my phone, not that it really has any bearing on the rule, but the labor secretary just resigned over that Epstein thing. So I don't think that would have any effect on the rule because that's just EBSA, the Employee Benefit Security Administration, is just one part of the DOL. They kind of not act on their own, but their own little fiefdom over there. So I'm sure that's going to have no effect at all. Next on our hit list, this is a favorite topic of ours of late, especially when dealing with our friends at Thrive. It's the student loan match.
Mm-hmm.
And to give everybody the background, Abbott Laboratories developed a We believe it's Abbott. Everybody says it's Abbott.
It was Abbott. Well, yeah.
And they got a private letter ruling that allowed them to offer a 401k match to participants who couldn't afford to defer in their 401k plan but did pay off a student loan. And the 401k, the IRS had to rule and show that this benefit wouldn't violate the contingent benefit plan rule. Contingent benefit plan rule is, in basic terms, says outside of 401k matching contributions, you cannot make a benefit contingent on deferring or not deferring in a 401k plan. So when I worked on union plans and the union lawyer wanted to develop some sort of payment in lieu of participants deferring, that presented a problem with the contingent benefit plan rule. So as a result of this student loan match, and let's talk about background. Everybody, I think if they've ever read anything I ever wrote, they know I couldn't stand my law school, the American University of Washington College of Law. I've had this hate relationship pretty much for the last 25 years. I haven't been to there. I haven't been to the school. They've changed they've now had another new building. I haven't been to the campus. Forget about the new building. I haven't been to the campus in 19 years. So anyway, I met the new dean a couple years ago. Very, very nice woman. She has a really tough job ahead of her. But anyway, it told me that law school, which is now ranked below law schools that didn't exist when I went to law school, which means the UNLV Law School did not exist in 1997 when I graduated, and it's now ranked higher than American University of Washington College of Law. But anyway, she told me, room and board and tuition, this is 2 years ago, so it's obviously $75,000 a year. It's $225,000 after 3 years, not including college. And it's crazy. When you think about education costs, people still paying off student loans. I still have a debt that my parents are servicing. So, it's a big thing. And, as a retirement plan business, you have to realize that student loans are a big thing because it's compromising people's ability to save money for retirement. And so anything that we can help them to save for retirement or help them in managing student loan debt is something that's a feather in our cap, something that we should be doing. And the student loan match is just one part of what the industry is looking towards in solving what I believe is, right, they talk about student loan crisis. To me, it's more of a college or higher education cost crisis. But obviously, since people use loans to pay for it, it's a big problem. So this is something that people should be aware of. I know Empower is working on a program as we speak. They actually are working with a provider and offering student loan matching next year, as well as other ancillary employer-provided benefits to help participants and their employees to pay off student loans.
Yeah, there are a couple of different approaches to it. I mean, I think the private ruling, and there's been another company that's done it since Abbott, so there are at least two that I know of that are out there. Essentially, it was the company would allow you to repay your student loan and then match, right, on the student loan payment, so you didn't lose the free money in the match. You were still contributing to your retirement plan while you were paying off your student loan. So there are a ton. When I say a ton, I mean really 5, 6, 7 different providers that we know of that have taken stabs at this. You mentioned the folks. I want to say it was Common Bond.
Common Bond, I believe, is the one who's working with Empower.
With Empower. Our friends Thrive, they've got a unique take on it. I'm not 100% sure that hallelujah moment, that hallelujah solution has been developed yet, but I do think we have a couple of really workable solutions out there that y'all should consider. Shameless plug here, we will have one of those solutions in our ancillary service provider roster under that HR association. So look for that from us here in the future. I'm not sure which direction we'll end up landing on, if it's teaming up with one of the existing folks out there, or sort of matriculating our own solution. Yet to be seen, but definitely one of those benefits that I think will get some purchase here in the future, and ultimately really is a great opportunity for advisors to have one more hook into that client, right? Deliver one more solution, deliver one more piece of quote unquote value add to that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, the more value that you add, the more irreplaceable you become.
Exactly.
So that's an exciting opportunity that, I don't know if it'll catch on so quickly, but then again, anything in this business, I had, people scoff at automatic enrollment, and I thought that was going to be a big thing, that it was going to take some time, and it obviously became a big thing, and Roth 401k, people told me it was never going to be popular, and, more and more plans are offering it because options and opportunities are good. We give choices. The only place that, too much choice is bad is on the fund lineup that we know. But anything outside of that tends to be very, very good for the participants. Next on our list, another favorite topic of ours, because we're developing something for that, is dealing with missing participants and uncashed checks. We need to focus on missing participants, locating them using the automatic rollover provision in the plan, and the reason is because the Department of Labor is saying, we're going to focus on this. And if they're going to focus on this, this is something that we should be aware of. It's not something out of left field. When they said years ago, this is our interpretation of what a late deferral is, and we're changing the way we look at it, well, that's something obviously that we needed to be aware of, and we were, at least for most of us were, and we had to deal with the ramifications of that. And we're going to have to deal with the ramifications of missing participants because, again, it's something that I think too many plan sponsors ignore. They only deal with missing participants when the plan is terminated and they want the money out to avoid that extra year of filing a 5500. So, they need to use the provision, need to try to locate missing participants, and then obviously use the automatic rollover provision when necessary or when allowed based on the cash out limits of the plan. And then, of course, there's the problem of dealing with uncashed checks. That's a problem because the Department of Labor, for years and years and years, has never really described any type of process of how to deal with uncashed checks. In the good old days, prior to the DOL guidance on missing participants, anytime we had a missing participant or we had an uncashed check, we did 100% withholding to the government, and that was the end of it. So, participant got screwed out of it, but, as plan providers, our work was easier. So, that's the issue. That's what we're dealing with. And that's, again, a concern for plan sponsors and other plan providers of dealing with missing participants. Automatic rollover IRAs, that's something Dan and I have been talking about. I've been through a DOL audit, and, they're asking some interesting questions dealing with automatic rollovers. What kind of provider are you using? What is the procedure? How are participants located? That sort of deal. So Dan and I, we're working on a product that should be interesting that I think will be a game changer in the industry.
Yep. We're at the drawing board. We're past the drawing board. I mean, we've got most of it worked out. You should definitely be hearing more about that probably towards the end of the summer. And in the run up to the national conference, and the stuff that we're doing with the HR Association. It's a cool product. We're super excited about it, and you guys will hear a lot more about it in the coming weeks and months.
Right, and it's an interesting time. We're going to offer a product that's something very, very unique in the business. I think when it came to automatic rollover IRAs, it really went one way. I don't think that I think the other solutions, the plan sponsor doesn't make out in the sense, and certainly the plan participant didn't, and especially the other plan providers. So we're going to offer something very, very interesting, and you'll hear about it very, very soon. Last but not least, shelf space payments. Now, this is a big deal. It's a big deal because a lot of the big providers are getting it, and literally, when I used to say that revenue sharing was a kickback, I predicted the end of the revenue sharing practice and procedures. I thought that fee disclosure was going to help kill off revenue sharing, and I think it kind of did. And litigation have certainly helped as well. And one thing I said was, once they get rid of revenue sharing, they're going to find another fee to create to offset the loss of revenue sharing. And a couple of big providers, and when we say big providers, I want to single out Fidelity. They are accepting payments from fund companies to be on a shelf in order to be a preferred fund or to be a fund on the lineup. Mainly it's because the problem and the costs involved of carrying all these funds on a platform, and companies like Vanguard, Fidelity thinks they're getting a free ride. So they wanted this fee structure, to offset the loss of revenue sharing. And if these payments are going to Fidelity, and it had nothing to do with plan assets, whatever, it was just this cost. Fidelity was under the position that it's legal. And they're being investigated, being sued over it. There are other providers that offer a similar product. Two in particular, I think one we know of, and some friends of ours. And then some friends of ours, I believe, are in the process, or they've come close to it. But anyway, shelf space payments are going to be a big deal. I think they're going to be a big deal to the point that the Department of Labor is probably going to enact some updates to the fee disclosure regulations and cover that aspect. To me, when Fidelity says it's totally legal, they're right. Yeah, it's legal for now. I think that the stink or complaints against it are going to require the DOL to re-examine the fee disclosure regulations and to cover that loophole, because that's what it is. And, in a sense, shelf payments are pay to play, if you think about it. I pay you, and you give me access. It's kind of like what everybody talks about, net neutrality. Should Netflix pay an ISP for access because most people use Netflix or one of the other streaming services that clogs up obviously the power of the internet for the ISP. It's the same aspect. It's the same kind of thing. It's again pay to play. I always say revenue sharing was essentially payola. And payola in the 50s is when DJs got money to play records of specific companies. The only reason that payola is illegal and revenue sharing was not was because the government said payola was illegal. So while Fidelity is right that what they're doing now is legal, it doesn't matter when the Department of Labor outlaws it. Or litigation makes the cost of offering these payments as cost prohibitive. So these are, these are the things that we're working on. And this is a real big consideration. And I think as a plan sponsor, you need to be aware of shelf space payments. It's not really affecting your costs, but it's a nice thing to know that the advisor is recommending funds that are paying a payment to the platform. And I think as an advisor, we discussed this in Denver. Somebody, I think, asked a question about it. And I said point blank, if you're an advisor, I think you should, and you know about it, disclose it to your clients. Just so the client doesn't think that you're hiding anything. If you're transparent with people, it goes a long way. You can tell them, you know what, we're on this platform, there's these payments, it's not affecting your costs, but we want you to be aware of it. Because it's better to say it yourself than have another competing advisor say it. You don't want to, I'm always big about appearances. You got to keep up good appearances, and not disclosing everything to a plan sponsor makes you look bad. So that's really where I think I stand on shelf space payments, and it should be interesting on how that goes around in the business.
Yeah, I mean, cops and robbers, cat and mouse. They'll figure out a way to legislate it in the industry. They'll figure out a way to, get that revenue somewhere else. I don't see that game changing. But I think the big point you made was disclosure, right? We could argue the legality of it or the morality of it, but I think if to your point, you are truthful and forthright with your client as an advisor, there's really no potential, at least in my opinion, there's no potential room for backlash, right? You close the potential door of another advisor using your lack of disclosure against you, and you sort of solidify the client's trust in you, right? You don't give. I mean, it could be just like a silly, innocuous thing, right? That could jeopardize your relationship. You can tell your client that you went to, you made up a vacation, some silly, any kind of inconsistency, any kind of untruth is a potential reason for someone to question you, for someone to ask more questions of you. And all that ends up potentially in a place where none of us want, right? We don't want to lose business. So just to your point, Ari, just disclose it.
Exactly. Again, that's these are the different topics that I think that plan sponsors are really unaware of, and I think that a lot of plan advisors have been unaware of, and this is where we stand in mid-2019. Until next week, it's Ari and Dan signing off. Take care, guys.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.